in the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We are live, we are national. Here's the phone number if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And a bunch of things going on, right? There's some lawfare updates I want to give you. There's an update on the Syria strike that we're going to get to. And, of course, we're going to talk about the state of the black electorate. And, again, when we talk about the electorate, I'm thinking of everybody, right? Not just black people, but Hispanic people, white people, Asian people. But, of course, the way the polls work, they like to break it down by segment. And, of course, each segment is affected by a different set of criteria. And nobody's really monolithic. But there are some significant gains that are being made by one candidate in particular. That would be Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente. And Donald J. Trump making those gains. A lot of people are weighing in on what's going on. So we're going to do that in a little bit. But first, I want to get to a little bit of what's going on with the lawfare, right? Because there's a bunch that has happened, right? First of all, the lawfare is really... This amazes me, right? Rhetorically, I have to give credit to some of these bad guys like the Adam Schiff for brains of the world and the Dan Goldmans of the world, because these guys are master wordsmiths at, basically making the people that are being victimized by something seem to be the perpetrator. And it really just amazes me. I mean, for example, former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, right? She's accusing Trump of abusing the system by using the legal avenues that are afforded to him as a defendant as some sort of abuse of the legal system. Mind you, it was Alvin Bragg, the Democrats, and everybody else that was involved in bringing these 4 federal indictments, right? Or at least 2 state ones and 2 or 3 state ones and the 2 federal ones, all at the same time. So it fascinates me. Anyway, I want you to hear what Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney, had to say. Listen to this.
On the other side of the equation is the way that Donald Trump uses the system against itself. And once it becomes clear that he's abusing the system for delay, to avoid facing courts, then I think the judges and prosecutors have to kick in and do, frankly, what they did in Manhattan. Hold that defendant's feet to the fire, say, as Jack Smith has said in the Washington, D.C. prosecution, the public has a speedy trial right, too, and try to get the equation so that everyone's rights, both the defendants and the public's, are respected.
Now, I got to tell you, it's amazing. Earlier, I heard someone else say that what's actually happening here is Trump is the one that's abusing the system. But you've got all sorts of people weighing in here. And this is saying that Trump is trying to delay, right? What's funny here is that most of these cases are well beyond the statute of limitations. So if the case could have been brought 5, 6, 7 years ago, why didn't they bring the case 5, 6, or 7 years ago? Simple answer. You guys know it. I'm not going to preach to the choir, except for this part. Because this is the election year, and this is the year they want to sabotage Trump. That's simple, right? He wants to talk about how he makes America great again. They want to talk about how he's a convicted felon. It doesn't get more simple than that. Who's abusing the system? Joe Biden, the Democrats, Alvin Bragg, Funny Willis, Jack Smith, and the rest of them? Or Donald Trump, who had to pay $175 million in a bond, and they're trying to take his building away, take his business away, take his money away, and put him in jail? I mean, this is a no-brainer. But you've got more. We've got Ty Cobb, former attorney for the White House. He's on CNN yesterday saying that what Judge Cannon is doing here is being a petty partisan prima donna. Listens to this.
The fact that Trump can get a hearing, on the flimsiest argument is shocking. But the other thing that's more fascinating about tomorrow is, she's not just listening to the parties tomorrow. She's opened this hearing, to outsiders. People not even participating in the litigation are going to have a chance to say their piece. The worst thing that could happen to her is that she actually does rule for Trump on this, because that would go to the 11th Circuit. And then I think this, petty partisan prima donna would be put in her place, and they would remove her.
Wow. Those are some pretty tough words. And, of course, he's talking about Judge Eileen Cannon, who was appointed during the Trump years. And she is the judge on the classified documents case, and she's hearing a challenge to the special counsel's appointment. Now, this is an argument that my mentor, my former boss, the great one, Mark Levin, has made, along with Attorney General Ed Meese and others, have said that this is an unconstitutional appointment of Jack Smith. And their argument seems legally sound to me, a novice, a layperson, a radio guy, right? Makes sense to me. I want to know if it makes sense to the court. And I'd love to hear the court's interpretation of it. So I'm glad that she's entertaining that. Of course, Judge Shira Schindlin. Now, some of you may not be familiar with Shira Schindlin, but I can't forget her. A couple of nights ago, we had Curtis Sliwa on, right? And he was talking about the John Gotti trial. When John Gotti was on trial in New York, John Gotti Jr., Judge Shira Schindlin was the judge on that case. And she's now a retired federal judge. And I would say she is also a petty partisan prima donna. But Judge Shira Schindlin weighed in on this and says, no, Judge Cannon doesn't have to do anything. She can do what she wants. Listen to this.
But what's interesting, Judge, is she's letting outside parties come in for these arguments that aren't working on the case. They're not prosecutors for the DOJ, and they're not employed by the Trump legal team.
No, this is absolutely unique to allow what's called an amicus to argue in the district court. It happens occasionally in the highest court of the United States, in the Supreme Court, but it never happens in the district court. She has the brief, read the brief, and make a decision. And she has lawyers arguing each position. She doesn't need to hear from these people. It's just going to take all day.
So you think she doesn't even need a hearing?
No. From these people. She doesn't need to hear from the amicus people, because they've submitted an amicus brief and she can read it. So she knows their argument. She can hear from the lawyers on the case who actually have a client, the United States, and the lawyers for Donald Trump. But she shouldn't be hearing from these people.
Now, again, this is Judge Shira Schindlin's opinion that Judge Cannon should not hear the case, should hear from these parties that are filing amicus briefs. But that is up to the judge, right? It's not that it's unheard of. While it may be atypical, it's also atypical to try a former president of the United States for everything under the sun. So I think she's well within her rights, and why not? This way you leave no stone unturned, and you can say, look, we've done this, we've done it well, and that's it. Right? Anyway, I got one final clip that I want to play for you, because I think it's the one that nails the hits the nail on the head, and that is everybody's favorite TV judge, at least mine, with the doily and everything, Judge Judy. She was on CNN today, and she was very, very balanced, very, very fair, and I think very, very clear. Listen to this.
Is that the justice system working, or is it the justice system being manipulated?
I would be happier, as someone who owns property in Manhattan, if the district attorney of New York County would take care of criminals who are making it impossible for citizens to walk in the streets and use the subway, to use his efforts to keep those people off the street, than to spend $5 million or $10 million of taxpayers' money trying Donald Trump on this nonsense. That's my view. But I, as a taxpayer in this country, resent using the system for your own personal self-aggrandizement. Now, if you didn't know...
And that's what you think the DA did in Manhattan?
That's what I think. I mean, if you look, you had to twist yourself into a pretzel to figure out what the crime was. He doesn't like them.
He doesn't like him. Clear as day. He doesn't like him. She makes it clear that none of them like him. And I think that's exactly it. Now, if I had to guess, I would say Judge Judy's not a huge fan of Donald Trump's presidency, or otherwise she would have alluded to that. But she tried. She tried to be fair. She tried to be balanced. And she said Bragg would be better served if he was taking care of criminals. And that's 100% right. So we'll touch back on the lawfare as we progress through the evening. I'm with you live till 1 a.m. Of course, the phone number 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. And straight ahead, I want to get into a little bit of what's going on with the black vote in America, because there's a lot of talk about a lot of things. You had a pastor that recently was praising Trump because he came to, quote, the hood, and good for Trump on doing that because it's something Biden didn't do. And everything's on the table, and you got to leave it all on the field. We're 5 months from Election Day. So, folks, don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Pastor, now he lost Detroit by 94% last time around. So what does Donald Trump's outreach mean to the community?
When you are in the worst of the worst, you're talking about women being human trafficked literally on the street next to us. You're talking about a methadone clinic where 500 people go every single day that are generationally addicted. When the president is willing to come and bring his presence, he is gaining relational equity, or we would call it in our community, street credibility.
Relational equity or street cred. And again, this is the pastor from Detroit, Pastor Sewell. And he's been out there beating the drum in support of Trump's policies, really not Trump himself so much, but Trump's policies. And I find that this is the growing trend. Right? And somebody challenged me on the air the other day and said, well, you know, you're painting the picture like all black voters are going to vote for Trump. And I had to correct the record and say, no, I'm not painting that picture. I'm painting the picture that Biden stood a chance, most Democrats stand a chance to get upwards of 80, close to 90% of the African-American vote. And Biden came in quite a bit lower, I think, in the last election. And he's positioned to get even lower in this election. So that means it's a gain for Trump, right? A loss for Biden is a gain for Trump. Does it mean that Trump will dominate the black vote totally? No, it doesn't mean that. At least that's not what the numbers are indicating. But does it mean that Trump is making huge gains? Absolutely. So I want to talk about that, and I want to talk, moreover, about the topic overall, right? The idea of what's in the book, The State of Black Progress. That's by Star Parker. And I read a Star Parker book. Let me tell you a funny story before I bring her on. Years ago, I'm talking like 15 years ago, I read a book that my buddy Brett Schundler, who's mayor in Jersey City, and then he became education commissioner in New Jersey. And he said, when you get a chance, check this out. And I read this book, and it was a fantastic book by Star Parker. And I'm thrilled to have her on the show tonight. Star Parker, welcome to the program.
Wow, you just aged me. And I'm sitting here thinking, I haven't heard from Brett in a long time. So it was either Pimps, Whores, and Welfare Brats, my autobiography, or it was Uncle Sam's Plantation.
Uncle Sam's Plantation. And you know, it's funny. The caveat was he said, you got to read this. And if you like it, you got to pass it on. And I did. And nobody ever gave it back to me. I hope they passed it on to somebody else as well. But really, really a phenomenal book. Let me just remind everybody, Star Parker is not just a fantastic person who writes books. She's founder and president of the Center for Urban Renewal. And again, the book is called The State of Black Progress. Star Parker, what inspired this most recent book?
Well, what inspired this most recent, it's actually not a book, it's a tome, because it's a compilation of authors and essayers who are describing the role of government and the courts in overcoming racial discrimination, but they explain how those very institutions have since become obstacles to Black progress in America. What inspired it is that the Urban League every year, over and over again, keeps trying to make the case through their State of Black America tome that it doesn't work for African Americans, that America is systemically and systematically racist, and therefore the solutions are the same: big government, more secularism, and more big government. So we decided at CURE that perhaps we should counter that, become the antithesis, actually put out, has America worked for Black people? And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. I mean, 2/3 of African Americans are not in poverty. When you think about where we are as a society, Black people are very mainstreamed and doing very well. Do we have pockets of concern? We absolutely do. But most of that is because of over-aggressive government policy based in the 60s and the war on poverty. So what we've done as a society is we've locked people in 8,700 broken zip codes, and that is the headline. This is Black life, and it's just not true. That 25%, yes, while it is in dire straits, everything in their communities are broken. We see crime, we see aggression, we see single-headed households, we see low educational aspirations, we see filth, we see no justice, but it's all government controlled. So that's what we focus on in this particular tome, the State of Black Progress. We did actually name it the State of Black America at first. A couple of years ago, we brought it the first one, but the Urban League came after us with their big lawyers here in Washington, D.C., told us you better cease and desist. So we said, okay, fine. We won't use the State of Black America. Let's just use the State of Black Progress so that we can let America know that, yes, America and our founding principles work even for Black people.
Wow. Fantastic. I'm glad you put this this kind of anthology together because this is, I think, one of the most important things that we have to fight for still in the area of civil rights. The fact that we still have, many on the left argue, right, about systemic racism. And I would say that the only systemic racism I've ever seen stemmed from FDR and others. And it's the Democrats themselves that have perpetuated this and carry it on in many ways today. And it's shameful to see it, but when you talked about 87, however many broken zip codes,
700, Mm-hmm.
I would bet
it's 20%
the last dollar in my pocket.
In our society. Mm-hmm.
Right, I would bet the last dollar in my pocket. They're typically not run by Republicans. It's usually Democrats in those same broken zip codes.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, the last time that Trump was here in Washington as the president, and he had made a political promise to African Americans that he was going to fix the inner cities. And although at that point he got 8% of the Black vote, he still came to Washington wanting to fix the inner cities. So under the leadership of Jerron Smith and others inside of the White House, there were others like myself outside of the White House who were working with him on his plans to fix the inner cities. So the first thing that he did was said, okay, so let's identify where we're broken. What is going on here? You know, he's a businessman. He wanted to know what's happening and what has happened. So as a result, he asked the states, okay, give me your bottom zip codes, the bottom 10% of the zip codes, the census tract. Let's see what's going on in them. And it's fascinating because when you think of the 50 states, none of them said no to Donald Trump. So all of the states gave the data that was necessary to then laser focus on these urban communities and rural communities. And as a result, we've seen some successes.
All right, amigos, we're coming right back with Star Parker. We're just getting started here. We're going to dig into the State of Black Progress, her new book. Make sure you get 2 copies, one for yourself, one to give away. Don't go anywhere again if you want to join the conversation. 833-4-VALDEZ is the number, 833-482-5337. It's Rich Valdez, and our guest is Star Parker.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So just listen to these people with all these platitudes and listen to his minions out here mouthing off this stuff. We have to be very careful because this is all about miscommunication, disinformation, and that is what caused me great pause because I know the power of the media. And the power of the media repeating these things rather than reporting what is actually happening, that is what's causing the problem. People feel depressed. And if you depress enough people, you can suppress their votes.
That's Congressman James Clyburn. And basically saying that, no, the black people are not really supporting Donald Trump. They're depressed. And because they're depressed and because of the media, you think that they're actually supporting Trump, but they're really not. I want to get back to our conversation on the state of black progress with Star Parker. She's founder and president of the Center for Urban Renewal. Make sure you check them out at CURE Policy, CURE policy.org. Star Parker, what do you think of what Congressman Clyburn had to say?
I think that the progressives are scared, and so is Biden. And it's not even about Biden, because if they switch him out at their convention, it's still their progressive ideas, and they're scared to death because he can pretend that, black people are just so stupid they don't understand what's going on in their pocketbooks. But a growing number of black voters are coming to realize that the policy prescriptions of progressives have not served them well. Period. Full stop. Okay, so now they're looking at, well, what should we do? We're talking about the middle class of African Americans. I told you. Now, America has worked very well for blacks. We have about 25% that are stuck in these horrible zip codes that Democrats have trapped them in, failing schools and in failing policies in housing and failing policies in health and failing economic policies with unions controlling everything from their policing to their schools to their prisons. But most African Americans are free from that. 40% live in the suburbs. So they're feeling the effect of the economy. What then happened under Trump's leadership? Under Trump's leadership, things got really better for African Americans. Entrepreneurship, young women going into business, men going into business, money in your pocket, deregulation really absolutely worked. Then here comes Biden. The next thing we know, we have nothing but the same rhetoric that we heard in the 50s, that America is not for you. The same thing that President then Johnson told a group of graduates from Howard University, one of the most prestigious HBCUs in the country, that freedom's not enough. You need a nanny state. Well, African Americans understand that now, and the young blacks are also looking at the fact that they're 2 generations away from the civil rights movement. While, yes, we know that history, while, yes, we appreciate those that went through that history, it is not the reality of black people because America worked for them. So they're looking for new answers of how do we increase from where we have been in the past to where we need to go in the future. And the Dems don't have the answers. They're hardcore, progressive, left-wing pagans, and black people are opening their minds to say maybe Trump has some better solutions.
I think you're right. And it's something I'm glad to see some of this change, some of this progression, because I think for a long time, I will agree with Clyburn on this. It's the media, right? And the media can get people depressed. I do agree with that the media has painted a very bleak picture, but in the wrong direction. Do you think that part of what I believe there were 2 pivotal moments, and I'm sure there's a lot more nuance to it, but I think there were 2 pivotal moments in the last several years where people were kind of jarringly awakened. And one of them was where Trump referred to the media as fake news. And it was such a simple thing, but it made a lot of sense to a lot of people. They're, oh, wow, fake news. They're not telling the truth. And it kind of opened things up. Then, you had COVID. That really put things over the top for a lot of people. And the other moment, in particular with black voters, was when he said, what do you have to lose? And the media skewered him. But I think a lot of black Americans were like, yeah, you're right. What do we have to lose? We've been doing this Democrat thing for, a generation or several, and it isn't working. What do you think?
Well, it's catching up because he asked that question before he won in 2016, and about 8% of African Americans voted for him at that time. So it didn't resonate at that time. But over that course of those 4 years, let's exclude the pandemic for a moment. Just in the tax bill alone, with him signing that into law, with an Opportunity Zone initiative inside of there penned by Senator Tim Scott, black reality in our hardest communities started changing. So, yes, while he asked the question, what do you have to lose? And they wasn't an immediate response. There was a looking to see, okay, so what do you have to offer? And over those 4 years, things really fared well. When America works, everybody is advantaged, and we all know that. And so the topics of the right, let's just take Donald Trump out of it. Let's just talk about the policies of the political differences between Democrats and Republicans. Republicans believe in school choice. They believe that money should follow parents and children to the schools that they desire. So we started seeing that reality out of his Department of Education. We believe that people should be able to work where they want to for the wage that they and their employer can negotiate. So we started seeing that out of the Department of Labor and the Department of Energy and the Department of Commerce, and even the SBA started really getting involved in saying, look, freedom works for you too. Go out there and negotiate. Let's put these unions aside. If you want to join one, fine, but you know what? Don't be forced to. So we started seeing that type of freedom in Black America. So over that course of 4 years, Black people experienced Donald Trump. So the next time he ran, 2020, he did increase the vote in the Black community. Instead of 8%, he got 12%. And some say it could have been higher than that if we can get the actual data out of the states that have shut themselves down due to the COVID changes.
Outstanding analysis. I think you're spot on there. Star Parker, thank you for that. Star Parker's founder and president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. CurePolicy.org is the website. We're discussing her book, The State of Black Progress. Make sure you pick up a copy for yourself, one to give away. We're coming right back with Star Parker.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation with Star Parker, founder and president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Her website, curepolicy.org, and the book we're discussing, The State of Black Progress. Now, Star Parker, I want you to help everybody that's listening right now understand a little bit or get a good sense of what they can walk away from, the big takeaway when they pick up a copy of the book.
That America works for all of its citizens, including African Americans who came in a horrible situation. Let's face it, slavery was real, Jim Crow was real, but the welfare state complicated matters. And we need to now go back to that moment in history and reassess some of the decisions that were made, whether it's housing policy, education policy, healthcare policy, or economic policy. And that's what this tome has inside of it, The State of Black Progress. We have authors from Janice Rogers Brown and Dr. Bill Allen, all the way to Steve Moore and Sally Pipes. And we talk about these issues because we do still have pockets of concern. But the bigger and broader communication for the public in this election year is America works. And I think that that's what we're seeing, regardless of how even Clyburn is trying to figure out what's gone wrong with their marketing into the Black community. Don't believe your eyes or your pocketbook. Just believe what we tell you to do. It's not working for them anymore. And so it's just over. The party's over. So it's up to the red team to make sure that they communicate the messaging that given the right set of policies and incentives, including minimal interference by government and the fostering of personal responsibility, Americans of all races can make just incredible progress in their lives. There are problems that exist, no question, but where problems exist and where progress is disappointing, invariably is government has been the problem, not the solution. So that's the takeaway from this particular tome that is a counter to what the Urban League, the NAACP, and all of the establishment civil rights organizations are saying about Black America.
Star Parker, why do you believe that the Urban League, the NAACP, the mainstream media, and so many in the inner city embrace this idea that, woe is me, and that the obstacles are insurmountable and that everything is stacked against them? And I'm not saying everything's perfect either, but why is it that it seems to be like almost a perpetual state of victimhood?
Money, 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 money. The perception of racism is a billion-dollar industry. I mean, look at B of A. They get $1 billion after the BLMers, and frankly, everybody was criticizing them for doing it, but it was like the alternatives would have cost them $50 billion because they would have had to build business and banks in communities that they knew they shouldn't have. Come on, this is not new, the shakedown of corporate America. When Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push went after Toyota years ago, the payout of Toyota was $450 million. Jesse got 10% and moved on. Look at what's happening even now. Nissan, then they went after, it was an undisclosed amount, but we found out later it was $650 million. It's a big business. Look at what's happening right now with the tobacco companies. Now, the progressive left is supposed to be against smoking, but Al Sharpton and the rest of these ilks are getting big dollars out of the tobacco industry so that they can convince people that maybe, it is a good idea to keep smoking Newports because, the difference in the Black community and white community is what kind of cigarettes they smoke. And so
sure.
We don't want to get too far into the weeds, but Newport and Cools are on the table. And so now they're just paying them off. It's about money. But the challenge is that when you have a Marxist socialist environment and or communism, the ultimate, the people at the elite status are the ones that are endowed. Everybody else suffers. America is exceptional because we are the exception to the rule, that if you work hard and play hard, you can really be successful in this country. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. America's exceptional because we are the exception to the rule. Your set of circumstances that you are born into do not define your destiny. And there are people that just disagree with that, regardless of their ethnicity. So, yes, you have gatekeepers. They don't want success. The civil rights era, Mike McCoby, when he wrote the book about the progressive narcissist, he made an interesting observation. He said a great movement, if not really guarded well with good people around it, can turn into business. And over time, that business can turn into a racket. And that's what we have today. The civil rights movement was necessary. But those folks during that time, Martin Luther King Jr., I Have a Dream speech, it resulted in the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act. We should have stopped there. The Supreme Court even ruled on interracial marriage, that it was unconstitutional. We should have stopped there. His movement was about desegregation, not forced integration. Forced integration became a business, and that business now is a racket. That's what has happened.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable how well you put it.
And I'm going to tell you one more thing before you let me go, because I know that you're running up time right here. Is
sure.
When Nikki Haley was running for the presidency and she said America has never been a racist country, no one knew what to do with what she said. But she was absolutely right. If you read that Declaration of Independence, who we are as a country, we were never a racist country. We were rooted in ideals of freedom for everybody. We hold truths, that the eternal truths. That's what it says. We're endowed with these truths. And yet, everybody didn't know what to do because there was a problem. Slavery was in our country at that time. We forgot to have that discussion with what she was saying is, no. This was our declaration. The whole Northeast abolished slavery upon that declaration signature. And it took us 89 years and, 680,000 dead later to realize that, yes, we want a more perfect union because our country was founded in principles of freedom that work for all.
Amen to that, Star Parker. Really well put. Can't wait to have you on again. Folks, Star Parker, you can find her at curepolicy.org is the website. And again, the book, The State of Black Progress. I recommend getting a copy for yourself, one to give away. Star Parker, if people want to keep up to speed with what you're doing on social media, where do they go?
If they go to curepolicy.org, they're going to find everything about all of that kind of stuff.
Outstanding. Curepolicy.org. That's C-U-R-E, just like Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Policy.org, C-U-R-E, policy.org. Star Parker, you truly are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being with us tonight.
Well, I just love being with you, Rich, and thank you so much for this opportunity to talk to your audience.
We'll do it again soon. I really enjoyed it. Anybody who agrees to stay up late, I bring them back.
I think I love it, and I'm telling you something. Most people do. When I was on ABC radio in California, I was the queen of the night, honey. I was on from midnight to 3, and I had the best of time because those truckers—they're always out there.
That's the truth.
So,
great
we have
people.
An election to win, so I will come back on with you.
Looking forward to it. Star Parker, thank you so much. God bless. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. To the phones we go. I want to check in with Mark, Albany, New York, WGDJ. That's the home of Paul Vandenberg, great broadcaster, by the way. Mark, go right ahead.
Yeah, good evening. I just want to mention that thanks for all you do. And you had mentioned Judge Judy.
Yeah.
And I got a couple things to say. I'm glad I'm not married to her, for one, but on the other hand, she'd make a great president, I'm thinking. I always used to say if I was going to vote for a woman president, I would be Judge Judy.
Yeah, you know what?
Everybody
And she'd have that cool doily on, right? She'd be in the Oval Office with the doily on and her black robe. That would be pretty cool. Funny, it sounds almost South Park-ish. Mark, thank you for the call. Big shout out to WGDJ. Let's go to Pat Sedona, Arizona, listening online, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thank you. Hey.
All right, let's go to Connor. Some bad weather in this part of the world. Maybe they're getting Pat too. Connor, Ocean City, Maryland. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, thanks for taking my call again.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
So I was listening last night, and you were talking about a specific convenience store, and I won't name any specific names, but it's funny because I was at that chain, and I had experienced what you were talking about in the responsibility being pushed onto the consumer to turn the store a profit, where it,
yeah, right. Instead of it being on them to provide the service. And, what's interesting is I've seen that happen in more than one place. I know I mentioned one place yesterday, but I also saw it happen at a chain pharmacy not too far from where I live. And I thought to myself, same thing, but there it was different, right? I walked up to the machine and they were like, oh, we can help you with the machine. I was like, I'd rather you help me at the register. And they said, oh, we could do that too. And they took me at the register and it was really cool. But, some places are really pushing, and I guess it's corporate sending that message down the pipe. But thank you, Connor, for the call. Pat in Arizona, I'm sorry. The music's playing, so I can't get to you now, but I'll get to you on open phones if you stick around. Folks, we're coming right back. Hour number 2. Don't go anywhere. It's me, Rich Valdez.
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
(482-5337) is our phone number, and I've been talking into the microphone. I guess you haven't heard me, and I was concerned. There was some lightning out there. The weather's been a little bit crazy, so forgive us for that little snafu. But again, welcome to the program, Rich Valdez. Hour number 2. We're live. We're national, and part of what we're going to get into tonight is something that happened a couple of days ago in Syria. The United States struck in Syria and killed 2 senior ISIS officials. Now, of course, we could always, hit the news feeds and see what's going on, but that doesn't give us much by way of the tea leaves, and it doesn't really help us understand what's happening geopolitically and how that fits into the rest of the world. So for that, I love to bring in one of my favorite guests, Brigadier General Blaine Holt. He's retired from the United States Air Force. He was also the deputy representative to NATO. General Holt, welcome back, sir.
Oh, it's great to be with you always. And just came out of the mountains in northern Idaho for a great week of camping, and I can't think of a better way to start back than with you, Rich.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your time off. And this kind of, for me, came out of the blue. I'm guessing you're in the loop and you're read in on some things, or hear the grapevine on others.
Right.
But I wasn't expecting in the middle of the week to hear about a U.S. strike in Syria. I had no idea we were striking anything in Syria. What's that all about? Where'd it come from? What's going on?
Yeah, so it's interesting to me that when you think about all the times that our bases that are in Syria, from Conoco or down and around southeastern Syria, had been repeatedly hit by Iranian proxy groups, and we didn't respond at all. But now here we have an out-of-the-blue strike on 2 officials associated with ISIS, and it makes you wonder. Well, okay, if you're doing that, tell us what the plan is. Tell us what your strategy is, because you certainly are leaving our bases undefended, and there are servicemen and service families that want answers because they've had injured coming home from those bases, and they want answers. And so why would we now pick a time to go ahead and hit Syria? I understand the cocktail with Iran, Israel, and then this war popping off with Lebanon. It's going to be very violent very quickly. But why isn't John Kirby up talking about that?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So now tell us what's unfolding in Lebanon and what's going on across the Middle East. Because last I checked in, the war cabinet was being dismantled by Prime Minister Netanyahu because of a conflict with the former General Benny Gantz, who was his former opponent. And that seems, things seem to be moving very quickly in that part of the world. Tell us more.
Yeah, if you can't get what you want one way, then you do it another way. And these are the fingerprints of Sullivan Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, and Secretary of State Blinken. They have pressured Israel for the longest time to put a velvet hammer on Hamas, to pull back, to engage in ceasefires that were not in Israel's best interest. So when they don't respond to that, what's the next step? Get involved in Israeli politics. Benny Gantz is a great friend of the Biden administration. That discord with our ally is now in the middle of Israeli politics at a time when they need an ally who will stand by them at a time when they're going to crush Hamas. And so Netanyahu's fighting many fronts, of course, including Iran, but he's also fighting the White House, who's trying to destabilize them. I mean, if you go back to Senator Schumer's remarks, he's the one who called for elections in another country simply because he doesn't like the way they're conducting their war. Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And, this reminds me of when it was Vice President Biden and then President Obama. And they also did a lot of interference with the Israeli elections way back then.
They absolutely did. And it's all about the four-letter word they can't say, Rich, and that's Iran. This administration, the Obama administration, has looked the other way on sanctions while the mullahs have enriched themselves, enriched uranium, and have threatened the world with not only terror, but regional wars, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis now. And then we are only waiting. It's not a matter of if, but when are these terror cells that they have brought across our unguarded border going to be activated, and what will they do? What are their designs on us? And Americans would love to know, well, what's our national security plan for that? Because it is a real threat. So says Director Wray, anyway.
Now, General Blaine Holt, I want to ask you, we've seen how this spills over with the Houthi rebels. We've seen how it spills over with Hezbollah. Now we're seeing it with more action in Lebanon. Will it be contained to these regions? Will it continue? What's your take on what's going to unfold in Lebanon? Well,
the second phase of this war that Israel absolutely has to go into is the war with Nasrallah and Hezbollah. The question now is not, is there going to be a major war with Lebanon like we saw in 2006? It will happen that way. But the question is, how far north will this go? Will this involve Beirut? Will the Lebanese government eventually orphan Hezbollah? There's going to be a lot of opportunities, but there's also threats because of the Iranian equation. And honestly, all of this gets back to this common denominator. When is Iran going to have a nuclear weapon that's testable? And then we all understand what Israel has to do. For us, it's an option. For them, it's a requirement.
Right. It's a way of life. It's whether they continue to exist or don't. Folks, we're having our conversation this evening with Brigadier General Blaine Holt. He's retired from the United States Air Force, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Yemen's Houthi rebels say they've attacked another cargo ship in the Red Sea. The terrorist organization released a video showing their June 12th attack on the Greek-owned MV Tudor coal carrier. Salvagers have confirmed the vessel sank. This marks the second time since November the Houthis have successfully sunk a commercial vessel. The group claims they are making the attacks in solidarity with the people of Gaza.
We keep hearing reports of this stuff that it doesn't seem like anything is getting better in the Middle East. And I don't even know what better looks like until we, I guess, eliminate the Iranian proxy groups that are operating there. Our guest is General Blaine Holt. General, what's your take on what happens here? Once Netanyahu, IDF, they eradicate what's remaining of Hamas, you're saying they're going to shift gears to go after Hezbollah. What about the Houthis? How does this whole thing play out?
Yeah, so the Houthis will always remain a problem for Israel while they're engaged in this. The areas that are most held at risk, Rich, are Eilat, the very southern port of Israel. They've been hit a couple of times by the Houthis. But the big impact, and they had a little strike on Haifa, which is in the northern part of Israel. The big impact is really through the Suez Canal. That's 13% of the world's shipping. This is shipping that means $30 million a day to Egypt. So Egypt's not very pleased with the Houthis either. And meanwhile, the administration wants us to believe that the United States Navy has its hands full with a group called the Houthis, not a nation state, just a terror group. Doesn't matter how they adorn themselves and what kind of costumes they wear. And this is all out of deference for Iran. This is about a special relationship that this administration has with Iran, where it looks the other way on sanctions, and it doesn't want to lock gears with the mullahs, and it hasn't done anything to curtail their advancement of nuclear weapons. Well, the Houthis get velvet glove treatment, and I can only imagine we have very frustrated admirals who would love nothing more than to conduct a proper air campaign against the Houthis. And if you had that, where the U.S. Air Force and the United States Navy brought the anvil down like we saw in Shock and Awe and the Gulf War and all of those other things, they'd be vaporized and they'd no longer be a part of the equation.
I guess that leads me to the bigger question, and it's one I find myself asking a lot, because I'm ignorant to this. Why does Iran have so much influence with the Obama-Biden Democrats? I feel like maybe they did with Carter in the past. Is it just weakness? Is it just the fecklessness of Biden and his poor foreign policy choices? Or is it really they're simpatico, right? There's some sympathy with them where they get along. I know John Kerry's had some long ties there. Help me understand.
Yeah, I'm with you on this last part that you just said, is they are simpatico. There's too many patterns that resemble the same thing. You've got the Carter administration that was very, very, let's say, hands off of the new rising revolutionary administration that was coming on during the hostage crisis. And they wrung their hands and they couldn't get themselves to do anything. And Reagan had to come in and just by virtue of his inauguration, the hostages were returned. Then you look at the Obama administration and this administration. You've got folks who are very, very close ties to Iran, Valerie Jarrett. Look at this espionage case with Robert O'Malley. There are deep, deep connections to Iran, and you know, they haven't really properly investigated any of this at all. But when we're looking at a globe, a world that's on the abyss, and looking at World War III, whether it's Europe, Asia, the Middle East, shouldn't we be investigating this stuff to find out who's got links that would take them away from their loyalty to the United States? Because if you want me to believe that the United States Navy can't deal with the Houthis, or that we're just not getting along very well with Israel as they finish off one of the worst terror organizations on the planet, I'm going to say I'm sorry, I'm not a buyer.
Right. And, you know, I think when we think of influence operations and espionage, and at least when I do, I'm always thinking about the threats that come in from, obviously they come in from everywhere, but I think the most sophisticated ones that I've seen in recent years have been from China, have been from Russia. I don't usually have Iran at the top of the list, but I know recently there's been some intelligence people that were discovered to be working in the Pentagon, and one moved into academia and the other one's still floating around somewhere. And I guess maybe because it's not top of mind awareness, we don't think of it. But would you say that they're as active as ever, or as active as the Chinese and the Russians?
Oh, I absolutely would. They've got formidable cyber capabilities. They have world-class espionage capabilities, and they're very, very, very good at infiltration into organizations. They do, like the Chinese do, get into our institutions like our colleges, R&D facilities, military. There's a difference between the word respect and admiration. I have no admiration for the Iranian regime, but I certainly respect their intelligence capabilities, much like North Korea, Russia, and China. And guess what? We see today that those alliances between those four nations is only getting tighter, only getting more galvanized as we wring our hands searching for some strategy that we can't seem to find.
General, outstanding analysis. Now, I want to get your take on some domestic policy stuff. We are 5 months away from the election. We've seen the mess that Biden's created in the Middle East. Neck and neck polls likely to change after the debates in one direction or the other, and I think we'll see a horse race up until Election Day. How do you think this whole thing ends up?
Well, I think that we're in very, very dangerous territory. We're very vulnerable right now, given the rancor in our elections. We have two sides both saying, essentially accusing the other of pre-election interference. And while we're arguing our way to Election Day, and we look at the situation with these illegals that want to co-opt our election system, you see man on the street interviews with illegals coming across the border saying, "Oh yeah, I'm going to vote for Biden." So while we're sorting out all these issues, we shouldn't be naive to the fact that we're very vulnerable right now. And on the foreign affairs ledger, you've got powers, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, that are very interested in bearing down and putting spin on the ball in our own country. And so we're in very, very dangerous territory. And so to the extent that we watch domestic politics play out, the lawfare against Trump, challenges to election interference can't be made anymore, which is the Michigan case that just came out where they are blocking any challenge from the people who are supposed to be in the business of auditing elections. We are literally in a place where we're fighting for the survival of our republic. And I fear, Rich, that there are so many Americans that don't understand what the stakes are today, that don't understand that World War III is a real term, or that the republic falling apart is a real possibility.
Folks, Brigadier General Blaine Holt at The Irascible. He's got a column by the same name on Newsmax.com. General, by the way, I've seen you on Newsmax. You're doing a bang-up job. You and our buddy Tony Schaefer, excellent work. Let everybody know the main website where they can keep up to speed with the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. You can always find me at The Irascible Disruptor on Newsmax for my weekly, and then I'm always at restore-liberty.org. And the only thing about us is we love our Constitution, we love American values, and please come visit us.
Absolutely. Folks, check him out. Give him a follow. Brigadier General Blaine Holt, thank you for being with us, sir.
Thank you, Rich.
You bet. All right. And with seconds to go, probably not enough time for me to squeeze in a phone call, but I will get to your calls at the top of the next hour for sure. And what we're going to talk about next, I think you're going to enjoy. It's climate change. Now, we're going to get to the bottom of a few different things that are going on, because there's just a lot. There's a UN Maritime Tribunal going on, and we're going to talk about the cost of going green and debunking what some of the climate change crazies are saying out there. And there's a lot of them. They were just defacing Stonehenge because of the summer solstice yesterday. Folks, don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez live with you till 1 a.m. Eastern time. And I want to get into this story that came out yesterday. I wanted to wait till today to talk about it, or it came out the night before last, actually. Environmental activists, a.k.a. on this program, we call them climate crazies. And these climate locals, they spray painted "Just Stop Oil" on the landmark known as Stonehenge. And you can hear a little bit of it in the background. They've got this big orange sprayer going on. It looks like almost like a fire extinguisher, honestly. And their T-shirts say "Just Stop Oil." Then some people came and got them to stop defacing the stones with their orange spray material. It's crazy. This happened in London on the evening. I guess for us it was evening of the 19th because they're 7 hours ahead. And the 2 people were arrested on suspicion of damaging the ancient monument, and that's what police said in a statement. Now, of course, the issue is not the fact that they're destroying Stonehenge or that they're actually going after the Mona Lisa like they did the other day. I mean, like last year or whatever it was, that they're constantly doing something to grab headlines and attention. But it's more so how aggressive they are. I saw a clip today. It was really something. On social media, it's this crazy protest, I'm going to call it, right? And the cops are locking people up because they're getting out of hand. And finally, at the end, this one woman is frantic. She's got to be, 20 years old, 23, 24, something in that range. And she's screaming. She's like, more people are dying of our dirty air than are dying of anything else. And it was just so like, wow, lady, calm down. Just take a second. I understand she's passionate about her cause. I get it. But nobody's going to pay attention if you're shouting, acting like a crazy, and getting locked up. But that's what's going on. And that's not the only thing. I mean, we've got a bunch of stuff here to unpack. We've got this UN Maritime Tribunal that's going on. I want to get to the bottom of that. You've got some debunking that's going on. We're going to get to that momentarily. Because ultimately, the cost of going green is a very high cost. And it costs a lot of people a lot of money, including all of us, through taxes, the changing of our economic system, and ultimately the changing of our transportation system, right? If we get rid of fossil fuels and have to go all electric, which in my opinion sounds farcical, but there are some that promote that. So I want to get into that with our guest. His name is Frank Lasee, president of Truth in Energy and Climate, and he's also a former state senator from the state of Wisconsin. Frank Lasee, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on your show. Interesting topics we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess let's take it up with this maritime tribunal with the UN. What's that all about?
They're looking for ways to make at any given time, there's 50 to 80,000 ships shipping things all around the world. I mean, China's making, virtually, I shouldn't say everything, but they're making so much of what we're using, and it's all shipped to us in the West. I mean, we're exporting our jobs to have them build it. And the irony is they build it all with, I shouldn't say all, but the vast majority of their energy comes from coal, not just their electricity, but all their energy comes from coal. They're using tremendous amounts of fossil fuels to make these things as a low-cost provider, and very little environmental protection. So the chemicals and things that we pay a lot of money to dispose of and clean and make sure they're not just dumped in Mother Earth there, they just dump them in Earth and then ship them across the seas to us. So they've already had round one a couple of years ago where they took the sulfur out of the diesel. So they're using diesel to run these ships. And that cleaned up the skies because sulfur aerosols, they call them, create clouds. And I've seen aerial pictures of this, and you could see where the ships were going. They'd have clouds above them. Now that's, I think, contributing to the warming of the oceans because the clouds, as part of our weather system, cool the earth during the day. And we've all been out there, out in the sun, and the clouds come over and it cools off. And it also holds in the heat at night. So it's a little bit warmer in the evenings or overnight. So that gives us we actually have a milder temperature now, not a hotter one like they're trying to sell us, the climate alarmists. We just don't have at nighttime lows as low as they used to be. And our daytime highs generally aren't as high as they used to be either. So they're looking to constrict this even further and find and force other types of so-called clean fuels to take care of and clean up this massive shipping that's going on all the time.
Now, Frank, let's say I'm tracking everything you're saying. I just want you to reiterate, who's making the clouds?
The clouds were being made by the sulfur that used to be in all of the diesel that ran these big ships that were transporting all the goods that they're making in China, mainly China. I mean, there's cross traffic going back as well, but it's really shipping things from China all around the world. And those were making clouds because the sulfur and the diesel were going up in the air, and they give water something to gather around to make clouds. Now, they've cleaned that up. 2 years ago, they cleaned that up. So they've all agreed, and they're not using sulfur. They're still burning diesel, but, I mean, that's just the first step. I mean, now they want to find ways to eliminate diesel, too. And then these things, as you mentioned earlier, are really wildly expensive. And the Chinese and the Indians, between the two of them in India, have 2.8 billion people out of the 8 billion people on Earth. And the other Asian countries have a lot of millions, hundreds of millions of people as well, like Pakistan and Southeast Asian countries. And they're not buying this stuff. They're building hundreds of coal plants. They're using more coal, oil, and natural gas than we've ever used before. And they're going to continue to do it because they literally have hundreds of millions of people who need more energy. And that's their priority. And they want to build all this stuff that they're selling to us.
Now, and the reason I reiterated the question was because it was not that long ago that China was producing clouds and trying to, part of their weather program to control the weather. And I'm just not sure if there's a lot of other countries that have a program as robust as theirs. And yet, people are going to turn around and say, well, you're changing this, you're doing that. Well, when you have entire governments working on changing the climate, it makes sense that there's going to be some changes, right?
Well, they're doing that here. They're experimenting with here. We're finding out local governments are prohibiting them in some instances. Mm-hmm. Some are funding them to create clouds. They think, creating the clouds during the day is going to cool the earth. And the earth is not overheating. A little bit of warmth coming out of the little ice age, the choice of language, pre-industrial times, a.k.a. little ice age. It's good that we're a few degrees warmer and we're not even a couple degrees warmer than the little ice age. Nowhere near how warm it was during the medieval warm period when Vikings settled Greenland and got frozen out about 1350. Nowhere near at all as warm as the Roman climate optimum, and they haven't gone back and changed that name yet. And it was several degrees warmer then, and people thrived. We like warmth. People are moving to Florida. They aren't moving to Canada. There's a lot of things. So we're basing this all on hysteria that is made up. And yes, governments and China has been doing very quietly. They're reclaiming huge areas of the Gobi Desert. I think I've caught news at 20 to 30, and you can't believe everything that comes out of China either. But 20 to 30% of the Gobi Desert has been reclaimed. And they're working on a huge water transfer from Nepal and Tibet to bring water into that whole desert area. I mean, just unbelievable amounts of water. So they're terraforming, and they're going about making the earth better where they are for people and animals. I'd argue that more animals will be in the area around the desert that's now green and has grass and forests and other things. And we should be not wasting our money on buying wind and solar and spending our money that we don't have, adding to our almost $35 trillion national debt, and buying most of these things from China. 80% of the solar panels and wind turbines all are manufactured in China. So we're borrowing money we don't have, adding to our national debt, adding to our interest payments to buy them from China, who builds them with coal, near slave labor, and doesn't protect the environment while they're doing it. This stuff is crazy. And this is the Biden policies.
Wow. You can't make this stuff up. Folks, we're on with Frank Lasee. He is with the group Truth in Energy and Climate. And we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
When we communicate the right way, I think this whole climate change dialogue is not going to work. I think this has been used for the last few decades. I think we should address it directly, what it is, which is pollution. We want to terminate pollution. That is the message we should go and get out there. And I think that it doesn't matter if it's the Chinese or the Russians, whoever it is, we maybe don't agree with them, but we all have to bring them in and we all have to work together with them.
That, of course, the unmistakable voice of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the former governor of California, known as the Governator. And without question, most people hear that voice and almost feel compelled to do their impression of it. I probably will do it, too, just not right now, because we've got Frank Lasee on the line. So we'll make fun of the Governator a little bit later. But he basically says, no, climate change isn't what we got to talk about. We got to talk about pollution. And again, it's still the environmentalism mantra: pollution, climate change, global warming, the sea levels, you name it. All of them seem to be inconsequential from my view. Frank Lasee, what do you think?
Absolutely. There's two parts. Going back to this maritime, you've got to clean up emissions to save the sinking islands. Mm-hmm. The islands actually aren't sinking. That's the other thing. The Tuvalu that they like to talk about and these other island groups, they're actually growing through accretion. The sand and the coral are making the islands grow. About 80% of them are actually getting bigger. So they haven't shrunk. They've been around forever, and they're going to continue to be that way. The sea levels, we have great tidal records from around the world that we have. Most of them started about 1880, but we have 100 years or more. And there's no acceleration in sea level. It's going up about a little less than an inch a decade and has around the world, but it's uneven. There are places like Louisiana on the western coast of Florida that are sinking. There are places like Seattle and Alaska that are actually raising out of the ocean, and Sweden is about 3 feet higher than it was. The country of Sweden is about 3 feet higher than it was 100 years ago. It's actually rising out of the ocean. So it's very uneven around the world. The other thing that the Governator was talking about, though, is equating CO2 as a pollution. And this is what they're doing. And there's real pollution. I mean, real pollution, particle matters, dirty things in the air. The Chinese are pumping a lot of them because they don't use clean coal technology like we do here. But CO2, we're all exhaling it. We exhale about 700 pounds of it. And if you run a lot, you're even more. If you're very active, you're doing that. We don't exhale pollutants. Oxygen and CO2 are the things of life on Earth. Without them, there is no life. The world is greening. According to NASA study, we're about 30% more green than we were just 45 years ago in the whole world. It's pretty amazing. I mean, if you think about it, the areas the size of France or bigger than Texas have regrown with forests naturally because they grow so much better with more CO2. Greenhouses pay money to add CO2 into the air there because it increases the crop harvest yields. They grow better. And then the other thing is they grow better and tolerate drought better and less water better, and they tolerate heat better because when there's more CO2, they have less breathing holes, little tiny stomata on them, and they lose less water. So they don't need as much water, and they tolerate heat better. All things that are good, but they're telling us just the opposite. They're telling our food supply is under threat, when in fact crop yields, how much are grown on the same amount of land, and harvest, the total amount harvested around the world in every crop are getting better and better. CO2 is airborne miracle-grow, and they're attacking our energy supply and attacking our food supply. This is not science. It's not based on science. The facts in the real world don't support what they're doing, and yet they march on, and we're being propagandized, and the media is being paid to do it. We've created $1 trillion industry, and much of that's bought from China, as I mentioned earlier. It really is not. It's not helping us.
Yeah, that's abundantly clear. Folks, we're on with Frank Lasee, and very, very honestly, a very interesting talk. It's just amazing how things get spun out of control. He's president of Truth in Energy and Climate, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So, according to the new survey from the ALPLA, the Americans are looking to be more green. The problem is they surveyed 600 adults. 69% of Americans are willing to buy reusable products, but 66% have refrained doing that because of the high cost of going green, highlighting a major obstacle in price sensitivity. And I wonder if that's something that you see a lot of, Frank Lasee.
Well, yes. I mean, we've been conditioned that we need to, that green is good, and, in the case of wind and solar, it's cheaper, but it's not. And that's one of those big climate lies. Climate energy lies is that it is more expensive and it makes our electric grids cost more. But the fact is that in nearly every instance, going green, renewable, any of those things costs more and significantly more. I was thinking the wheels are coming off this bus in Europe. People are starting to rebel against it. But now we're giving away multi-billions to our public schools to buy electric buses that really aren't ready for prime time. They cost triple. They could buy 3 natural gas buses or diesel buses for the cost of one electric bus. And then the problem is the way it works now is after 10 years, because of the way the federal funding works, those diesel and natural gas buses get sold elsewhere and are used. And they even go to foreign countries and spend another decade or 2 or 3 on the road. Well, they don't have the infrastructure in poor countries for all this electricity and electric buses, so they'll be useless after they spend their 10 years and they're triple the cost up front. This is the green economy they keep talking about. We can't afford it anymore. And they've been lying to us about it. And I have a book that's just at pre-release stages right now, but you can catch it on Amazon, Climate and Energy Lies, because they're lying about what's going on with the climate to drive really horrendous to the West and to all of us, our freedom, our way of life, our lifestyle. They want to control it all. And they're lying to us about it being cheaper because it's not. So people want to do this, and we all want to do the right thing. And we have much cleaner air now than we did 25 years ago. Much cleaner water in our lakes, rivers, and streams nearly everywhere in our country. They don't in China, they don't in India, but even there they're making some progress.
Folks, I just want to remind you to get the book, Climate and Energy Lies by Frank Lasee. Check it out on Amazon or wherever you get your books. And check out their website, truthinenergyandclimate.com. Frank Lasee, president of Truth in Energy and Climate. I want to thank you for being with us tonight, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me on. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Godspeed. Appreciate it. And folks, Open Phone America is coming up. We're doing it live, and we're doing it right now. 833-482-5337 is the phone number. 833-4-VALDEZ. You get to weigh in on all of the news of the day and then some. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3. This is called Open Phone America. I love this hour because we get to talk a lot. And the phone number, 833-482-5337-8334 Valdez is the phone number. And, you know, the folks on the media that, you know, we all watch it. There's conservative media, there's liberal media, there's people pretending to be neither. But the reality is everybody has a perspective, and that's fine. I think the key is you don't want to pretend that you don't have one and then, you know, and have one. And I think when you watch a network like Newsmax or even Fox News, the commentary is conservative, and the news is, in my opinion, pretty much down the middle. And that's how they call it. And we don't see exactly the same thing on the other networks. I think sometimes there's a blurred distinction between the commentary and the news, especially when there's very little news sometimes. And it's all commentary, all opinion, all conjecture. And the news is more of their opinion and more commentary and more conjecture. And that's, you know, not news, right? But you've got folks that are out there, like Democrat strategist Fernand Amandi. And he was on MSNBC yesterday, and he's singing the praises of all of the illegal immigration that we have in our country. Listen to this.
The fact that undocumented immigrants and many of the immigrant population that currently resides in the United States, they pay billions every year into entitlement programs, Social Security, Medicare, not to mention every other program that they are not going to benefit one red cent from, but that the American community, the American public as a whole, American citizens, of course, will benefit tremendously from. Historically as well, you also have to consider, Joy, real quick, we have never had a wave of immigrants in this country in our history that hasn't added and grown the country and made the country prosper, despite the demonization that has been consistent from the right and a lot of times every immigration wave that has happened.
So let me help him out, because I think this has got to be one of the silliest things I've heard. And I'll start with this. Social Security, Medicare, not to mention every of the programs that they're not going to benefit not one red cent from. That's what he said. I'm reading the transcript. All right, let's just take this step by step here. I'm not going to say that there are not people that are operating under a fake Social Security number or with perhaps a tax ID number that are working on the books somewhere. But I'm going to say in most instances, those are rare scenarios. I think that's fair to say. Most instances. Not the exceptions to the rule. Most illegal aliens are not paying into Medicare and Social Security. I will accept anybody who wants to argue me and say, oh, but they pay. They do. They pay into everything else, right? Sales tax. That's it, right? I think that's pretty much it. Sales tax. Because outside of that, I can't imagine when I go places and I see, you know, hordes of men looking to make an honest day's pay, that the person that's hiring them from the parking lot of the Home Depot is going to be paying them with a check, taking out FICA, taking out Medicare. I just, it's not happening, right? So this point that he's making is not really a point. Now, yes, there are some people, like I said, with the fake Social Security numbers or who apply for a tax ID number and use that in place of a social and contribute to these things. And maybe they do and maybe they don't, right? If they do get this pathway to citizenship, then they'll reap every penny, every last red cent. But the other point that he makes is that we've never had a wave of immigrants in this country in our history that hasn't added or grown the country. Well, obviously, sir, if you let in 10 million people, you're going to have 10 million people. Now, I think the point that he's trying to make is that there have been times the Irish immigrants helped build the railroads, et cetera, and et cetera. I get that point. I do. But the big difference was most of that labor was legal. People were bringing people in on visas to do this work. And there's such a distinction that we're making here. Then he says the right is trying to demonize the undocumented immigrants because they crossed into the country illegally. It's not about demonizing them. It really isn't. And that's definitely not my perspective. You know who I demonize? The demonic people that do demonic things. Not somebody that's here working on a tax ID number or working off the book somewhere. You know why? Because I don't know those people. Or if I do, they're nice, right? I don't have a problem with them. You know who I know? All these pendejos that I see every day on the news wearing an orange jumpsuit for getting arrested for committing a new heinous murder, a new rape. Is this Fernand Amandi, Democrat strategist on MSNBC, is he making the case that that's what we should expect in America, is more crime coming from overseas? Look, I understand that there's crime in America, irrespective of where people are coming from. Nobody's denying that. We should take care of the crime that we have in America. I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently, and she said, if you were really concerned about rape, you would go after white men, because white men commit more sexual assault than anybody else. Why are you so fixated on illegal immigrants? And I said, it's very simple. I'm fixated on illegal immigrants because those are the ones that we should never have to deal with, ever. Now, by definition, if you're legally allowed to be in this country and you happen to be a D-bag criminal, then we have to deal with that crime as it comes up, because you have a right to be here. You may lose your right to your freedom when you get prosecuted and jailed, but that's how that works. I think that makes sense to me. We shouldn't be importing criminals. We shouldn't be importing the mentally ill. But somehow Fernand Amandi thinks that that's okay, and that I, or those on the right, as he's referring it to, are demonizing these good people. No, sir, I am demonizing the people that commit these heinous acts and murders. Listen to this.
Marlon Aguilar, Arturo Eustaquio, Noah Guzman Hernandez, Daniel Ruiz Lopez, and Carlos Funes. All of them are from Mexico and Honduras, and all 5 were transported to the Macon County Jail, where they have been charged with kidnapping and endangering the welfare of a child. Now, the men are being held without bond and are listed as a flight risk because they are illegal immigrants and a danger to children. Here's what we've found out so far from the court documents we've been able to obtain. According to the documents, the Missouri State Highway Patrol was informed about the missing girl around 2 o'clock Monday morning. The girl's father had reportedly witnessed the young girl enter a black Dodge Durango with unknown registration. The father then contacted the Logansport Police Department to report that his daughter was missing. The Cass County Sheriff's Office then notified troopers that the missing girl's cell phone had pinged from the suspect vehicle with a Texas registration, and that the car was traveling westbound on US 36 near Hannibal, Missouri. Moments later, a trooper spotted an SUV that matched the description and performed a traffic stop, where he then saw a girl in the back seat who identified herself as the missing teen.
Now, I don't want you to get confused and think that this is the same story about the young woman last named Nungaray, right? Nungaray. It's not. That girl was 12. This girl's 14. Every day there's a new story of some illegal immigrants that are sex-crazed lunatics that need to be demonized because they're demonic. They're coming from Venezuela, clearly, right? These aren't people coming from Mexico. They're not coming from pretty much anywhere else, from what I see. They're all, why? Because they're emptying jails in Venezuela. That's why. And they're sending them here. And we're welcoming them with open arms. And every time, it's the same story. This guy gets a teenage girl. The guy from the day before, from last night, that guy videotaped the girl and the boy, tied them up. Then he raped the girl, put the whole thing on video. In this story, it's 5 guys that steal a little girl, that they're suspected of actually trying to traffic her, to turn her into a sex slave. This is absolutely horrific, that anyone would sit here and say that the right is trying to demonize immigrants. I'm demonizing these monsters. They've done it to themselves. They're attacking children, little girls. Anybody who doesn't support killing people like this, you're just as guilty as they are, in my opinion. It's absolutely crazy to hear any Democrat strategist try and defend this and say that the right is this and the right is that. We're thankful, and we should be thankful, and we should be appreciative that we have people in this country that care about the welfare of minors, that care about little girls being able to actually survive. This call, you heard the report. Her dad called this in because he watched her get taken by the car. Isn't that crazy? And so he called the cops and reported his daughter missing. This isn't a joke, man. I mean, again, I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting because I happen to have two kids that both are girls and they're both young. But I can't imagine how any parent is feeling safe right now when we have this clear and present danger, Joe Biden and his policies at our southern border. Blows me away. Your call's coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, we continue our conversation. And again, recapping a little bit tonight, we talked about the state of black progress. We talked about climate change. We talked about the Middle East. We've talked about Trump. We've talked about immigration. There's a lot on the table. Let's hit the phones. Pat in Sedona, Arizona has been listening online, richvaldez.com, patiently waiting. Pat, how are you, sir?
Just fine, Rich. Thank you for being patient with me. I know my phone went kapooey when I wanted to talk to that lady, but
oh yeah,
I'll tell you what, that was one heck of a great
Star
interview.
Parker you're talking about.
One word I heard that hit my heart: personal responsibility. She was talking about personal responsibility, about taking care of yourself. You don't have to, you may be born poor, but you don't have to stay that way. In another word, the money. That's what the Rainbow Coalition and Jesse Jackson and even Black Lives Matter does. They don't care about black people. They care about the money. And they stole it. And it's been proven. But the media, as you say, they're just not talking about it. And everybody knows. Tell that to your media friends. We know that they're lying. It's just we have to really, really work hard trying to find out what the truth is. And here I come to you, because I hear the truth out of you. I may want to hear from you and hear what you say because I believe in you. But, man, you make sense. And the people you interview make sense. That I don't know if that gentleman was an admiral or it was a lieutenant.
General
colonel,
Holt.
That one you talked to about the Middle East.
Yeah,
Great
General
interview.
Holt.
Oh, man, Rich, you're hitting them out of the park. I tell you, thank you. Thank you. From my heart.
I appreciate it, Pat.
I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're a good man, and thank you for your service always, Pat. I appreciate it. And, you know, you bring up a good point that the key is personal responsibility. And this isn't new, right, Pat? It's not new for me. It's not new for you. It's not new for our families. America's always been about personal responsibility. And to me, the question that I would posit is this. Why is it that some communities, groups, neighborhoods, whatever, why is it that some of them aren't getting that message? Why aren't they getting the message of loving the stars and stripes? Why aren't they getting the message of America being the land of opportunity? And it's because of what we talked about with Star Parker. And you're right. It is a cash cow. The racial grievance industry, it's a cottage industry, but it makes money. It gives them power. It gives them a large group of people that can be very angry when they're told that they're being slighted. And who wouldn't be angry when they're told they're being slighted? And you play both sides against the middle so that you always maintain the control. And it's what the Democrat Party has been doing for a very long time. And I think for the first time in a very long time, we're starting to see a shift and a departure from that allegiance to the Democrat Party. And I couldn't be happier, honestly. Pat, thanks for the call, my brother. I appreciate it. God bless you, sir. Let us continue. Where do we go? Ken, Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. Great show as always.
Thank you.
In the last week, on Just What I Know Of, we had a mother from Maryland of 5 get murdered. We had a 12-year-old girl in Houston get kidnapped and murdered. We had a 13-year-old boy and girl get raped in Central Park, and the guy even was brave enough to videotape it. Now, if that doesn't convince people that we have an issue going on in this country on our border, I don't know what the hell is going to do it. But I want to say the media got it completely wrong on Biden as far as at the Juneteenth event at the White House. They haven't seen it for a while. Boris Karloff perfected it. It's called The Frankenstein by Joe Biden.
That was a great reference of Boris Karloff. Yeah, listen, you're right, Ken. And I don't want to make light of anything you said because I think you're spot on. You're right. This week in particular, and there's been many weeks like this, from the time of Laken Riley to before Laken Riley, where you have multiple incidents, murders, rapes that are reported, teenage girls, and there's one trend, all illegal aliens. Now, what's interesting here is that when the news broke about this yesterday, I looked at the articles that came out, and the article headlines always read like this: 2 men arrested for kidnapping 14-year-old. Or 5 men arrested. Then the other one said 2 men arrested for murder of 12-year-old girl. And then you read more, and then you get more reports, and then it's not just 2 men. It's 2 men that were caught and released by the Mayorkas crew. And not only were they, caught and then released, some of them had been prior arrested and then released again on no cash bail, but they're all illegal aliens. And we seem to turn a blind eye to that. And in many of these, they say they killed them, and then they leave out the part that they raped these girls before they killed them. I mean, the state of reporting and journalism in our country is in a very bad place. There is a massive, I'm going to call it a cover-up that's going on with these stories where people aren't telling them the right way until like the second and third day. And okay, I understand sometimes more information becomes available later, but bottom line is people need to be careful. If you've got children that are little, you got to watch your back. Ken in Lansing, Michigan, WILS, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. We've got calls from Iowa, Arkansas, Delaware, and more. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Your calls are coming up with me. And all of a sudden, people are coming in from Tajikistan. Wait till you hear this report. Don't go anywhere, folks. It's Rich Valdez, Open Phone America. Be right back.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The number of migrants crossing the border from Tajikistan, an ISIS recruitment hotbed, has exploded under the Biden administration. There have been roughly 1,500 migrant crossings from Tajikistan under the Biden administration, and just the year before that. Over the previous 14 years, there were just 26 Tajiks to cross the border. Now, this information comes to us after we reported on the 8 individuals from Tajikistan that were nabbed within the country after crossing the border. They are said to be tied to ISIS and were arrested as part of a joint operation between the FBI and ICE. Those arrests took place in Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and New York. Now, the reason Tajikistan is of particular concern for terrorist threats is because ISIS and its affiliate ISIS Khorasan have been recruiting there and also have been recruiting Tajiks living outside of Tajikistan.
So that's the new hotbed for ISIS, Tajikistan. That reporter from the New York Post, her name, I'm waiting for her name. Jenny Tare. Thank you. And interesting report, right? This is a follow-up to the 8 people that were caught, I think, last Monday that we talked about during the week. And this is horrible. I mean, the whole thing is horrible, in my opinion. I think that we need to pay attention to what's going on because we've got Venezuela emptying out their manicomios, right? The mental institutions, their prisons. They're letting them out. They're coming here. Clearly, these people come here and they think it's okay to rape little girls. So that's a problem. We have people from Tajikistan coming in. That's a problem because they're obviously an ISIS hotbed right now. And the left wants to make the case that those on the right are demonizing illegal immigration. What am I supposed to do? Celebrate this? Are we supposed to say this is a good thing? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, I want to get to your calls. I know you guys have thoughts on a number of issues, including the Middle East and the debates that are coming up, as well as the Supreme Court case. I think we have a clip on that, too. We might get to that shortly. Let's go to Doc, Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. Doc, go right ahead.
2 points, both very controversial, so bear with me. I'm very disappointed in the Supreme Court's ruling on the Second Amendment. I'll tell you why. It was bad law to begin with under the Clinton administration. I don't feel that any person who has only one conviction for domestic violence should be denied the right to have a shotgun or a pistol in his home for self-defense, and here's why. Under Delaware law, if I shove, I don't hit her, don't punch her, don't kick her. I merely shove my wife or my girlfriend. It's considered in Delaware law a crime called offensive touching. It's a Class B felony. I could do jail time. Under Delaware law, I will have all my guns taken away by the courts. I'll never have, and under federal law, this new ruling of the court, I'll never have the right to have a gun again. That is wrong constitutionally. That's my feeling on the Second Amendment ruling by the court. It was bad law. Now then, on the border crisis, we know from Jim Bohannon when he was on and from you that these ISIS characters are coming across the southern border in droves. The American people are only going to wake up when, in my lifetime and yours, Rich, I'm 70 years old, it's going to happen in my lifetime, there is a dirty bomb detonated across that southern border in a major American city, either a chemical weapon or a radiological weapon. I want your thoughts on that.
Listen, I think that is always an issue. Always, though. I don't mean just now. Always. A dirty bomb is always an issue. And I don't see that being the case. Honestly, I don't. I think the bigger concern that we have here, because, again, to do a dirty bomb, you need a handful of people and you move them around and that's it. And you've done it. You don't need a lot. They could be suitcase bombs. It could be a small thing. What we're seeing here are massive amounts of people, or what can be perceived, or at least suspected to be, a lot of cells, sleeper cells, terror cells that are just waiting to move, to pounce. And they don't have to be working in concert, right? This doesn't mean like there's one evil bad guy somewhere that's saying, all right, we're going to get these guys to come in. And we're going to get... No, all the bad guys are saying, oh, look, there's a way into America where they're not paying that much of attention. Let's get in. So, yeah, now by that definition, or by that explanation, then, yeah, it makes tons of sense that maybe one of those groups is looking to do something like a dirty bomb. I just don't think that's the case. I really don't. There's a lot other and better ways to inflict pain and damage on this country. And they know what they're doing. I mean, clearly one of the best ways they do it is with this misinformation, right? Misinformation, disinformation, sowing strife into our population. Huge thing for foreign adversaries to do. I think that another way to absolutely cripple the country is to hit us where we get our energy, to cripple our energy supply. You can also just have a major hack. And we've had, some situations similar to that have been difficult. I remember somebody called in talking about trying to get their medication after that pharmaceutical hack. And it affected tons of pharmacies for months to come. So with that said, Doc, I think there's always a threat that we could have a dirty bomb and this, that, and the other. But I think the bigger issue here is that we've gotten, by conservative estimates, 8 million new people. By more aggressive estimates, some people say it's more than double that, and it's closer to 20 million because that number is too conservative. So if you're talking about somewhere between 8 and 20 million new people in our country, and they're not all here to get a job, and daily we hear about handfuls of them that are raping small children, girls in particular, teenage girls, 12, 13, 14, then it's clear to me we have multiple problems on our hands, and we have millions of people to deal with. This is a situation I think we've never been in before. This is why I see Biden moving to codify amnesty any and every which way he can, because it is a massive task. It doesn't matter how zealous you are to try and deport all these people. You can't. I don't believe that it can be done. I believe that you can go after the criminals, and that's what we should do. Anybody that's known to be here with a criminal record, the first step, shut the border, stop letting people in, period. Don't let them in at all. And then work backwards from there to, going after people that are presenting a risk and working with law enforcement to make sure that they're actually locking people up and they're not letting people go. And this is going to be a task, because if you look at all these stories, how many stories have we heard? Plenty of people saying, oh, they were locked up in New York and ended up in a different state and then committed a different crime. We hear that way too often. Why? Because New York refuses to lock up anybody who's here illegally because of their sanctuary city, sanctuary state policies. So they are able to offend here and be released with no cash bail. So there's no incentive to show up for court. They end up in another state and whatever. Think about just, 3 months ago when they had that one Venezuelan guy who had the TikTok and Instagram page with thousands and tens of thousands of followers, where he was making fun of Americans. And he was like, keep coming to America. When you come, they give you checks. That you come here, you have a kid, they'll pay for the birth of your child. It's the best thing ever. Right? And he amassed so many followers saying, teaching his followers how to exploit America. Finally, it was embarrassing the administration so much that they sent the ICE folks to get him. And then he was crying. Right? He was actually crying on his YouTube saying, oh, my God, they came to get me. They want to take me away from my family. They're mistreating me. They were rough on me. What a punk, right? But my point is, we've seen so many of these instances. So that was a long-winded answer to your question, Doc. But ultimately, that's where I think we land. We have to stop this for everything and then work backwards to get rid of the criminal aliens, to those that present the problem, those that we know who've been processed in the system by some police department somewhere, track them down and get rid of them because they're not here for anything good. And that's evidenced by all of these rapes, murders, and other crimes that we see on a regular basis. If they're emptied out of a jail, we don't need them in our country. Folks, we're coming right back with the rest of your calls. Doc, thank you for your call. Have a great weekend. Big shout out to you. Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The U.S. Supreme Court has just upheld a federal gun control law that is intended to protect victims of domestic violence. Now, this is the first Second Amendment case since the High Court expanded gun rights back in 2022. The justices ruled 8-1 in favor of a 1994 ban on firearms for people under restraining order. So this is about the protection of the loved ones of people who have guns who are under restraining orders. And the court wants those folks to stay away from their spouses or partners. The justices reversed the ruling from an appeals court in New Orleans that had struck down the law. Now, this morning, Justice Clarence Thomas dissented. He was the author of that 2022 ruling.
All right. So there you have the report on what came out of the Supreme Court. Again, Justice Clarence Thomas was the sole dissenter in the Supreme Court's decision on guns today. He broke with his 8 colleagues who all voted to uphold this federal gun ban for people under domestic violence restraining orders, a decision that handed a win to the Biden administration and the gun control groups. And It's a striking change for Thomas, who authored the Supreme Court's expanded Second Amendment test 2 years ago, known as the Bruin decision, that was at the center of Friday's case. The test requires gun regulations to fit within the nation's historical tradition of firearms regulations. Chief Justice Roberts, joined by 7 of his colleagues, said Friday that the domestic abuser gun ban could be compared to a tradition of disarming people who pose a credible safety threat. The question is whether the government can strip the Second Amendment right of anyone subject to a protective order, even if he has never been accused or convicted of a crime. It cannot, Thomas responded in his 32-page dissent, nearly twice as long as Roberts' majority opinion. Quote, the court and the government do not point to a single historical law revoking a citizen's Second Amendment right based on possible interpersonal violence. He continued, referring to the statute at issue, adding that he believed the government had not borne its burden. And I tend to agree with Justice Thomas here. I would love to hear Alito's stance on it because, you know, these are all jurists that I respect. And an interesting topic, right? You get some people that, you know, type of crazies that kill their wives. And then you've got other people that, you know, are the ones getting attacked and end up in trouble. And I've seen that happen more often than not. And I'll just throw out a quick anecdotal note for you. Of the people I've met in my life that have been arrested for, like, domestic battery, every single one that I've met didn't do it. And the charges were ultimately dropped because it was an argument with the wife or the girlfriend or whatever it was, where they were trying to get back at them and they wanted them locked up and they were trying to make a point, a power play by the woman. And that's messed up. And again, that's my own personal experience with people that I know, and they were able to, you know, walk away from it because these women, their temperatures went down and they became more clear-headed and they decided not to pursue it. But messed up, right? Very messed up. Because another interesting tidbit, and you could fact check this, most women that are beaten by husbands, partners, spouses, whatever, don't ever report it. That's another true factoid for you. I wish I had an actual fact to bring up, but I'm not wrong on that one. Anyway, let us go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Go right ahead.
Hey, love them calls by Doc. He's always got something wise to say.
Yeah,
and I'm 70. I didn't know he was 70. I'm 70 just like he is. That's a synchronicity. And another thing, my call won't be too long because you took a bunch of my spiel there. I agree with you 100%. And I experienced 2 in Missouri. They're called protective orders. Mm-hmm. And the lawyers will tell the woman when it's time to get a divorce in consultation, they'll tell them, hey, we got to get him out of the house, and then you've got access to all the personal property, and you can even pawn off his guns and all that kind of stuff. So the sheriff agreed with me when I argued the judge, when I first started, she started the divorce, I didn't, but first time in, he said, there may be, right away, no interstate trafficking in guns, no buying and selling over state lines. I'm going to go ahead and order that, but the sheriff says he's not going to do a thing with you if you're caught with a gun during this extended restraining order, protective order time. Well, you go in 10 days later because it's an accusation, and after you argue it, if you're a guy like me, public enemy number 1, it's always in there for some kind of traffic litigation. Well, then, okay, we're going to extend it a whole year. You can get your ideas together and reconcile or whatever, but no guns, right? Well, the sheriff, I had 2 witnesses, Bible says right. 2 or 3, and the sheriff and the chief deputy testified on my behalf, said they were going to order, in fact, that I was not the problem, she was the problem, and I went ahead and kept them, and nothing was done with me, so that was a blessing. But my point is, the sheriff admitted, and I've talked to other sheriffs in other counties in Missouri, and they all say the same thing. 9 out of 10, like you alluded to there, are always BS. They make them up, and do they ever prosecute them for perjury? Absolutely not.
No, yeah, it's really messed up. And, you know, a lot of states have laws where if a officer shows up on what's reported as a domestic call, that somebody must go to jail, right? Somebody has to be locked up. I think that's also unfair. People hear people fighting or whatever, and again, I'm not even married, so it's not like I'm sitting here fighting with my wife and having the cops called on me. But I can only imagine if somebody gets into an argument and the neighbor calls the cops and they're like, "Hey, we got a call. There's going on. Or one of you has got to go to jail." And again, I don't know if it's that strict all the time, but it just seems uncanny the amount of times I've seen it happen. And to think if that law is that wishy-washy, and now we're going to have the Supreme Court weigh in and say, well, you're no longer allowed to have a Second Amendment right because of this protective order, irrespective of being convicted of anything, just the fact that you have this protective order, that seems grossly unfair to me. Anyway, Joe, thank you for your call. I appreciate you and your kind words. We're coming right back. Council Bluffs, Iowa, KMA, and more coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
All right, to the phones we go, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's check in with Owen calling from Council Bluffs, Iowa on KMA. Owen, go right ahead.
Hello, sir. Thank you very much for taking my call. You know, I just graduated from high school, and it's really nice to know when I'm finishing a sporting event at night that I can hear some sense being taught on the media, on the radio. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, my question, yes, thank you. My question concerns education. You know, gun rights are very important to me. The border is very important to me. But as a young conservative who has really seen the school system, it's important to me that we know our candidates are going to keep education in mind. And knowing that we have two lame duck candidates coming in for the presidency, seeing what their ideas on education are very important. So what would you like to see? You know, what are some good questions you think
what
need to be asked next week?
What makes you think President Trump is lame duck on education? He's put forth a very robust education plan.
No, and what I mean by that is that after this term, this is his one term left.
I see. So even should he win, how do we move forward with that? Right. Well, listen, I'm all for Reagan and Trump's plan to abolish the Federal Department of Education. It's become nothing more than a bank during the Obama years. And that's shameful, right? That we operate a bank called the Department of Education. And in doing that, you know, it's kind of like when Castro said, "Oh, wow, I've taken over as a communist dictator, but look at our literacy rates. They're doing so well." Why? Because they were forcing people to read the indoctrination materials. And in many ways, I think that's what we're seeing here. We've seen graduation rates go up. Do we have any smarter people graduating? Absolutely not. What we have are people that are climate activists, activists for every cause under the sun, minus being activists for the good old U.S. of A. Owen, thanks for your call. Stay the course. Happy that you just graduated. And folks, I'll be back on Monday. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night and God bless. I'm Rich Valdez.